And we're back. Different face in the seat. The matriarch of the Hayes family. The pastor, no longer associate, how about that? Of the Engrafted Word Family Church. And my mother. It's a big title right there. Pastor Erica, welcome back to PB&J. You haven't been on here since the beginning of the year. But it's much better lighting this time than the last time you were on. Better camera.
I don't have a cough.
Nobody has any coughs. Pastor has his voice, or Bishop has his voice now. It's all great. It's all good. It's good to be back with you on PB&J. It's good to be back with you, watching and listening on Spotify. It is good to be back, and we're continuing our month of the series called Mental You. Pastor Erica, we've been talking about mental health here at PB&J for the month of October. It's my birthday month, so I figured I get to choose the topic.
Fair enough.
Even though I choose it every month. Look, we've talked about, just to give you kind of catch up, because as the listeners know, you don't listen to the podcast, so we'll catch you up.
I listen once in a while.
We talked about sin to start the month. I was by myself, no bishop. We talked about sin. We talked about the weight of sin. We talked about the pressures of sin, and the pressures that can come with trying to outrun your sin. And then last week, we spoke with your daughter, Jaden, about loneliness, and about what's the difference between being alone and being lonely, and then good. What are some of the pressures, and what are the pressures of singleness, what are the pressures of feeling lonely when everybody else around you seems to be in relationships, and then to really round it all out, do we put intimate relationship on a pedestal, and it has become an idol in our lives, rather than just being something we allow God to work in and through us for those things. So, but all of it kind of still stems from the pressures of sin, especially this week, Pastor Erica, because we're going to be talking about grudges, scars, and letting go.
Oh, what a lucky person I am to get such a topic.
I liked this month. I chose people I thought could handle the topics the way they need to be handled, with the grace they need to be handled with. And again, like Bishop always says, it's important that the message speaks to the speaker before they speak it to the listener. So, Pastor Erica, you are one person who knows a lot about scars and about grudges, and you have worked very hard on the letting go piece. As somebody who's grown up with you and watched you mature, I was your firstborn, so I got to see all the bumps and bruises along the way. That maybe not Jaden doesn't always see, or that other people don't get to see. And while we're not going to tear the veil completely, right? This isn't Golgotha. This is PB&J. So we will be as open as you are comfortable with being.
Okay.
But Pastor Erica, let's just tell the people right off the bat, what is the issue with grudges? Huh? What is the issue with grudges?
Well, holding a grudge makes you feel so much better about that you're so much better than the person you're holding the grudge against. I mean, right?
Right. That's what you say. Look, Pastor Erica, grudges are something that we all hold, whether we want to or not. And some of us are much better at letting it go than others, and others of us could never dare to let it go. I've worked for people like that. You've worked for people like that. You've lost jobs because of that. I have too. And I think, but the issue of grudges, right? The issue that we face with grudges is what it does to us spiritually, sometimes even physically. So, Pastor Erica, why do you think that it's such human nature to hold grudges?
I think that any time we feel that someone has wronged us, any time that we feel that something has been done to us unjust or unfair, we want to retaliate, and if we can't, then we just internalize it. And as we internalize it, we just, that whole self-talk about, I deserve this, they deserve this, that type of thing. So I think that's why, because we enjoy making ourselves look better in our own mind than we really are, and making the other person, it's a blame game. If I can blame someone else, then I don't have to be better.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a good point. And we talked about a little bit briefly about what effects it can have spiritually. Now, we know that, it's a battlefield of the mind. Always has been, always will be, when it comes to injustice, when it comes to feeling wronged, when it comes to all those things. And Jesus, Paul, God, Moses, Abraham, all of them are very clear about holding on to and being unforgiving of others just means that you're going to also be unforgiven until you can let those things go. And while we will read some verses that allude to that and directly say it, what effects, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, do you think grudges really hold on people?
Well, I don't have to think. I know firsthand. I had a grudge that caused all kinds of physical stuff in my life. Caused me to lose my hair, caused me to have constant stomach trouble. Physically, it can wreak havoc on your physical body. But I think spiritually, it's more important to look at what it does to you spiritually, because it builds a wall between you and God, and that wall, you're the only one that can penetrate it, because it's our choice. Yeah. So I think spiritually, it can really put you in a bad place where you don't trust God, you don't believe that He's a good God, and when you get to that place, there's not a whole lot of hope. There's not a lot of peace. And once those things are robbed, when you're robbed of those things, your life just kind of snowballs out of control.
To say the least. So, Pastor Erica, when you think about grudges, we think of them, to have a grudge, you usually have to have an attack. Whether it's a perceived attack, whether it's a legitimate attack, whether it's a little bit of both. But all battles leave battle scars, right? And oftentimes scars are a remnant of things that have happened to you. If you've ever had stitches and it didn't heal right, you remember exactly how you got those stitches, you'll never forget. If you ever got knee surgery, if you ever had open heart surgery, brain surgery, those scars don't go away. You have those scars forever. And so when we have these attacks on an emotional and a spiritual level, we scar a little bit. There's some scar tissue in there. What do you think the best course of action is to use those scars, rather than holding the grudge that we just talked about? How do we use those scars to learn from and then also witness to those battles that we've been through?
I think that using our scars to be a witness to others is always helpful. I'm all about learning from others' mistakes. So when people tell me what they've been through, it makes me a little more leery if I'm going through that same situation. But I also think that our scars remind us of how far God has brought us. When you're truly willing to let go and let God heal you, and you're truly willing to look back and say, wow, God walked me through that. When we look at our scars, it's a reminder of where we've come from. Many years ago, back in 1999, my blood all left my body, and I was in the hospital for a week, and they were poking me and prodding me and all this other stuff. And right here on the palm of my hand, they had blown a vein, and there was a scar there for quite a while. And actually, even now, if I get really sunburnt or suntanned, I can still see that scar. And every time it shows up, it reminds me of there was no reason for all of the blood to have left my body. They couldn't figure out where it went or how it got gone. And only by the grace of God there was nothing wrong with me. So I think that our scars help that. And I think emotionally, when we think of the things that God has brought us through, it reminds us, if He brought us through then, He'll bring us through now. And when we remember that, it makes it a little bit easier to be like, that person may not have meant it in this way, and even if that person did mean it in this way, they're going through something, and if I hold a grudge, it only hurts me, it doesn't hurt them. And so I think when you think about others in that light, it's easier to let those things go as opposed to holding on to them, and then they just grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, and so, kind of like we talked about, in the week about sin, when you allow things to grow, when you allow things to fester, when you allow the enemy to cultivate your guilt and your dismay and what's going on around you, the scars then become more wounds than scars. And while we talked about last week in one of the verses that I read, that God will bind up the brokenhearted, right? And while Jesus' sacrifice, as we talked about, was for to make us whole with Him and through Him. Pastor Erica, I spoke pretty heavily about forgiveness. And I told him we talk about it more later, and this is now later. But the big question that everybody wants to know, that they wish they could understand, is how do we let it go? Because, as you just alluded to, as I said a few weeks ago, we are only hurting ourselves 9 times out of 10 when we hold a grudge. That person has moved on. That person doesn't care. That person could care less if they wounded you. They didn't even know they wounded you. And here you are holding it, festering it, letting the enemy build up all these scenarios in your head of how you're going to tell them off or how you're going to hurt them back or all of those things, right? And in Matthew chapter 18, Peter comes to Jesus and asks, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? And of course Jesus responds, 7 times 70, right? Which, and then the disciples, because they always miss it, right? It always goes right here. Like, we never do that. But, they go 144 times, that's it? That's all I got to do? So 145, I can finally be upset? Not exactly what Jesus was saying, but Pastor Erica, in your experience and your wisdom, how do we let go of our grudges and our scars?
This is going to sound so simple, but in 54 years of my life, I've done this several times. You just have to choose to. You have to get tired of feeling the way that you do. You have to get tired of always thinking about that person. You have to get tired of thinking about what they did to you. Because all it does is it robs you not just of your joy, which is huge, but it robs you of your time. It robs you of all of the other relationships that you have in your life. It robs you of so many things that at some point you just have to say, I'm going to choose to forgive this. I'm going to choose to forgive this offense, this person, this situation. And when you choose that, the best way to get on beyond it is you start praying for that person. And there can be days when you start, it could be a simple, Lord, I thank you that I don't hate that person. Like, you got to start where you are. If it is a simple, Lord, I don't know how to forgive them, but I want to forgive them. And God will build on that. And then eventually you'll find yourself saying, Lord, bless them. I want good for them. I want things to work out for them. And then you kind of look back and you're like, where did that come from? But it's a choice. I know that sounds so simple, and I know some people have been hurt really, really badly by people. And some of those people may even be dead that hurt you. You are never, ever going to get the apology that you are expecting from someone who's dead. So you have to choose to forgive whether they give you an apology or not.
Well, Pastor Eric, I told them that when it came to closure and some of this stuff, because sometimes you never get closure with forgiveness, unfortunately. Sometimes you have to forgive them in silence. You may never even see them again to ask for their forgiveness for the wrong you did, or tell them that you forgive them for the wrong they did. And then again, sometimes it's not even worth it. Right. You don't look at somebody and say, I forgive you. They're going to say, huh?
For what?
What do you mean? That was 25 years ago,
Right. They didn't think another thing about it. Yes. And for 25 years you've dwelt on it. What a waste.
Well, yeah.
What a waste.
That's what I spoke about a couple weeks ago, is, the effects that this has on us. It can be crazy. I mean, imagine spending, let's just go 10 years, because 25 is a long time to be holding a grudge, but even 10 years, from, let's say, somebody in high school did you wrong, and now it's almost real close to being 10 years of a high school graduate. and you're still mad at them 10 years later, and they have graduated college or started a job and are successful in their own right or have a family, and you're worried about something that happened in high school. That all you're doing is letting that eat at you. And again, what we talk about with strongholds of sin, this becomes a stronghold in your life. The enemy knows how to use it. You'll start seeing their Instagram posts more. You guys think that stuff just happens, right? You go, my phone's listening to me. No, the enemy knows how to reach you where you're at. Just like God knows how to meet you where you're at, right? Depends on which side of the AM, FM radio you're listening to. But Pastor Erica, this next question is going to sound super simple to those listening, especially those of the engrafted word that listen to this. But for some, hopefully this is groundbreaking to them. Pastor Erica, as Christians, right, we are called to forgive.
Right.
Okay, turn the other cheek, which, But in 1 John chapter 2, verse 9, it says, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Okay? So us Christians, we are called to have a higher standard for ourselves than the world. That should not be a surprise if it is. Welcome to PB&J. We've been doing a podcast for about 3 years. Talked about it many times. But Pastor Erica, where is there more power in? And this is where, again, it sounds simple, but is there more power in forgiveness or in bitterness? Before you answer that, right? I know some of you listening to me feel very powerful in your bitterness, right? You're able to hold that sin over somebody. You're able to hold that grudge over somebody. You found the person that does care that they hurt you, and you keep bringing it up every time you see them. 1 Corinthians 13 will tell you about that. You feel so powerful because they feel so little to you. And on the flip side, right? Then you wonder why you have a high heart, what is it? High blood pressure. Cholesterol's high. You can't sleep. You can't lose weight. You can't think. You're losing your hair. You're losing your hearing, your eyesight, because you don't know what's going on. Pastor Eric, I think there's some forgiveness, some power in forgiveness that's more liberating than any of that. What do you think?
I think that you're exactly right, that bitterness causes so many physical things, so many mental things, but the power of forgiveness is crazy amazing. The power of forgiveness allows you to walk with your head held high, to walk with confidence, to walk with no shame, to walk with a light air about you, to be joyful, to be kind to those around you. The power of forgiveness is beyond the power of bitterness, because forgiveness allows you not only to get rid of it on yourself, but when you are bitter, you're bitter to everybody. It doesn't matter who is around you, and they could be your family that you love dearly, but that control of that bitterness that's on you, when that's let loose, not only are you better for you, but you're better for all those around you, in your work environment, in your school environment, in your church environment, in your family. You're just a better person when you let go and let God. And when you realize that vengeance is the Lord's, and for such a offense to affect you, you have to remember you have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So for you to judge someone else and take it upon yourself to say that bitterness, you're holding on to it because they deserve. Well, if we all got what we deserved, we would all be just dust in the wind.
We deserve wrath, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I guess, depending on how you look at it, if you're Mr. Richard. Look, guys, when we think about mental health, right, and I know that it seems like we're not talking about it the same way the mainstream does and all that stuff. That's because I'm trying to give you the spiritual side of things this month. I don't want it to be a woe with me party, or, and I'm not saying it's not okay to not be okay, because we're human, and that's part of it. But a lot of stuff in the Word, like we talked about last week with Jaden and loneliness, a lot of this stuff, it tells you exactly what you got to do. And again, it's not easy. It's not easy to let go of your sin. It's not easy to forgive yourself sometimes. But it is possible, because all things through Him are possible. And when you think about mental health, there's a lot of people that struggle with the grudges and the scars that these transgressions or sin cause, because you dwell on them, you think about them, and you hold on to them, and you let the enemy make you just hate and hate and hate, and that's not how we're called to love or hate. We're not called to do any of that.
Our bodies weren't designed to hold that hate.
Right.
Our physical bodies were not, which includes your mind. Your mind was, that's why people go crazy, because our minds were not made. God did not make our bodies to do that.
Right. And so when we talk about with sin, when we renew and transform our minds, that is where God can work his miracles in our lives to forgive others. When it seems like there's no way you can forgive. When the woman stands there and forgives the killer for killing her baby boy, or the wife, forgives for killing her husband, or vice versa. To be able to do that there's a special prayer, there's a special connection to the Spirit that you have to be able to do that and mean it. It's cute to say it for the sake of an Instagram clip or a TikTok short or whatever it is, but to mean it and say it to the face of somebody who took something that you love from you, you have to, again, think about the sacrifice Jesus made on the cross. A perfect man took everything you did, from using a curse word to drinking too many beers to the extreme of hitting your spouse or abusing your kids. He took all of that on himself for you.
Amen.
And for you to not think that other people deserve that same forgiveness, to think that is just God, Jesus did that for me, but not you.
But I wasn't that bad.
No.
That's right.
That's what they say, and that is a dangerous line to play the game on. And let me tell you, you better get it right, because there will be a time when you have to answer for that, and I don't think you're going to like what he has to say back to you.
Yeah.
But Pastor Erica, there's one last thing that I think is important. We're going to go strictly to relationships, because a lot of mental health comes from relationships.
Yes, it does.
Pastor Erica, there's a 5-letter word. Okay. Starts with the T, ends with the T, and Russ is in the middle of it. And that's trust. Okay. Now, trust is something that we are called to do. We're called to trust in the Lord and have faith in the Lord. And any relationship, if it's good and if it's built on the right foundation, you have trust. Whether it be a friend, a spouse, a romantic partner, a friend, you're supposed to trust them. Pastor Eric, you've taught me throughout my young life and even as an adult that trust is the most oxymoron of things, because it is way easier to lose trust than it is to gain it. Why do you think that is, Pastor Eric?
Well, I think that you have to earn someone's trust. God doesn't have to earn our trust, because he created us. But when it comes to relationships here on earth and relationships between each other, between humankind, trust is something that you get because you continue and you give your word and you follow through with it. You don't lie, you don't steal, you don't cheat. You gain someone's trust by keeping a confidence. You gain someone's trust by being there for them when they need you. So you have to work to gain someone's trust. I don't think I've ever been in a relationship that you just automatically trust someone. In fact, I think most people will if they feel like this is a relationship, a friendship, or any type of relationship where you're going to, where you think maybe this person is going to be in my life for a while or for a lifetime, that sometimes you kind of, this is horrible to say, but you kind of bait them. Like you might tell them something that is insignificant, and if they tell 20 other people, then you're like, I can't trust that person. So then, you tell them something that doesn't really matter, and if it gets out, it gets out.
Sure.
But then when you do trust someone and they violate that trust, this is an area of my own personal life that I am not very good at. When someone violates my trust,
Sure.
it is really, really hard for me to trust that person again. And I know that's not godly. That is an area of my life that I have much work to do. There have been very few people in my life since the beginning of my life that I could truly trust and that have never broken my trust. So trust doesn't come easy for me. And to be honest, there was many years of my life that I didn't trust God. And I thought I did, but I didn't really. And the only reason I know that I didn't really is because I truly trust him now, and I see that in my own life. But where people are concerned, when someone has broken my trust, it's just an area I need to work on. But trust, it is definitely way harder to gain than it is to lose. You can lose somebody's trust in one sentence.
Yeah, in
one word. Yes, in one word.
Look, and all of that is very true, and what Pastor Eric has said is true for a lot of people. That it is very hard when you are wronged to trust that person, for the relationship to be the same with that person. I think anybody who's saying it is not is lying to you. They may have grown to where that's not the case anymore, but everybody's experienced that one way or another, especially if any of you were ever social in high school. So, but
I can forgive you, but that trust is different. Like, I can forgive you and not hold anything against you, but to trust you back into my inner circle and back into my confidence, that's the part that...
And I think, for the sake of what we're talking about, that also can still be a crutch and a grudge that you hold on to. Forgive and forget is what we talked about when it comes to how God treats our sin, right? If we are truly repentant of our sin.
Yeah.
And while that's much easier for us, if we put ourselves in his shoes, and please don't come at me in the comments, I'm not saying you're God, but if we put ourselves in his shoes, how many times have you gone and apologized to God for something and then went ahead and did it the next week?
Right.
How many of you are going to the club on Saturday and you're in the pulpit, or not the pulpit, oh boy, some of them I guess, but in the pew on Sunday, and asking God to change your heart and change, I don't want to do this anymore, and you're right back there on Saturday because that's where the girls are, that's where the boys are, that's where the boys and girls are. If God treated us that same way, we also would we also be on the outside looking in it. And that's not a slam at you by any means, but it is something to think about when you think about, wow, yes, it is hard to gain that trust. It's easy to lose that trust, hard to gain it back. When you're holding that distrust, and some people deserve no trust. I mean, some people, that's just how the relationship ends and you guys go your separate ways, but there's a lot of you listening that have had family members do that to you, and it's hard to let them go during Thanksgiving and Christmas when that's all you got. So my whole point in saying that is that in 1 Corinthians 13, obviously everybody knows love is patient, love is kind, doesn't envy, does not boast, but also in there it says keeps no record of wrong. And that's what a grudge is you're keeping record of what is wrong, what has been done wrong. And trust me, if God kept a record of all the things that have done wrong, let me just tell you, that line to get through the rapture would be tough. It would be a tough line to read through what everybody...
It'd be a lonely place at the pearly gates.
It would be. But, at the very beginning of this, I told you guys that the phrase is forgive and forget, not forget to forgive. And
that's good.
That is what we have to keep in top of our mind when we are talking about our mental health and the grudges that we hold against those who have been around us. And sometimes you gotta forgive yourself, because I talked about it with Jaden. Sometimes you're in relationships you should never have been in. And sometimes you're in places you never should have gone. And the call on your life to forgive others and move on is not going anywhere. The Bible's not changing. There's no, unless somebody else finds golden tablets in the woods like Joseph Smith, we're good. All right, we got the 66 books. You need to follow them. So when you guys are thinking about this, I want you, in your personal time of reading, I want you guys to go and look at some of these verses here. More specifically, Jesus in Matthew 6 talks a lot about forgiving others. and how we can be forgiven. But his brother James wrote a book too that also goes over in James chapter 1 and Matthew 6. I want you to go read some of that stuff there about forgiveness and how we can handle those things, because I'm telling you guys that the number one thing I think that can really change the course of where your mental's at is forgiving yourself and forgiving those. Because we hold grudges against ourselves too. And I think people forget that and try to overlook that because we put it under an umbrella of many other disorders and things like that. But you have to be able to forgive yourself just as much as you have to be able to forgive others, because God can forgive you. And like I talked about, you keep bringing it up to him. He's going to keep telling you, what are you talking about? Until you can do the same thing, it's going to be a whirlwind for you. Pastor Eric, any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to kind of wrap up the idea of letting go of grudges and scars?
Just know that the topic is mental health, and just know that your mental health is contingent upon you being able to let go of grudges and you being able to forgive, to forget, and to move forward with good health for you. And it'll make you a better person. And in you being a better person, you'll be better for all those around you.
Amen. Well, like Elsa said, let it go. Let it go.
Let it go.
Can't hold me back anymore. Look, thank you guys for joining us again. Thank you, Pastor Erica, for taking some time to be with us here on PB&J this month. And until next time, go and grow with purpose. Peace.